The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom has been arrested, in a courtroom live and in full view of the nation. A moment unprecedented in modern British politics, sending shockwaves through Westminster and far beyond. This is UK 360, and what unfolded just over an hour ago may well redefine the trajectory of British governance for years to come. Subscribe now to stay ahead, because what comes next is even more revealing and far more significant. Here's what we know. Keir Starmer, the sitting Prime Minister and leader of the Labour Party, was taken into custody directly from the courtroom, not from Downing Street, not from his private residence, from the very heart of a legal chamber filled with journalists, legal counsel, and stunned members of the public. The arrest was swift, surgical in its precision. One moment Starmer stood before the bench, the next uniformed officers moved in calm, deliberate and impeccably coordinated. Within seconds he was handcuffed and escorted through a side exit. As cameras captured every second, outside chaos erupted. Reporters scrambled to go live. Crowds surged against barriers, some cheering, others visibly shaken. Within minutes, every major broadcaster, BBC, Sky News, CNN International, was running continuous coverage. And online, the reaction was instantaneous. Within 10 minutes, it was the top trending story worldwide. Social platforms flooded with footage, replayed frame by frame, a digital wildfire engulfing the globe. This wasn't just breaking news. This was a political earthquake, but the question remains, why law enforcement offered almost nothing in the way of detail. A single terse statement confirming the arrest was lawful. With further information to follow, that vacuum of clarity only deepened the crisis. No charges announced, no timeline, no explanation, just a sitting Prime Minister in handcuffs, and a nation demanding answers. In the absence of facts, speculation took hold. Was this corruption, political retaliation, or the revelation of a deeper legal scandal? Conjecture raced ahead of truth. Let's pull back for context. This moment did not arise in isolation. For weeks, whispers in Westminster had pointed to mounting legal and ethical scrutiny surrounding the Prime Minister. Investigations behind closed doors, restricted filings allegations, though unconfirmed, of procedural breaches with far-reaching consequences. Sources close to the inquiry spoke of sealed documents and evidence, still under review by prosecutors. The secrecy has done little to quell public suspicion. For many, the symbolism is staggering. Keir Starmer, once one of Britain's most respected legal minds, now facing the very justice system he once upheld. As Director of Public Prosecutions from 2008 to 2013, Starmer built his reputation on discipline, transparency, and an unshakable commitment to the rule of law. Today, that legacy stands in stark contrast to the image of a Prime Minister, LED away in handcuffs. To his supporters, this is a tragic collapse. A man undone by the weight of politics. To his critics, it is poetic justice, the law finally without fear or favor. Starmer's rise was meteoric, from barrister to labor leader to prime minister, a political ascent powered by promises of integrity and reform. He vowed to restore trust to a system battered by scandal. Yet now that image lies in ruins, and his government already fragile. The economy stagnant, inflation stubborn, and the cost of living crisis biting deep. Polls had shown a steady decline in public confidence, a population weary of hardship and hungry for accountability. Opposition benches had scented blood for months. Even within his own party, unease was growing. So when the Prime Minister entered that courtroom today, he did so under immense political pressure. Allies anxious, adversaries circling, and a nation divided in disbelief. And then it happened, an arrest. That will be remembered as one of the defining moments in British political history, and then came the moment that shattered Britain's political balance. The arrest of the Prime Minister sent Westminster into a state of absolute turmoil. Inside Parliament, the reaction was instant and explosive. Labour MPs were blindsided. Some erupted in fury, denouncing the move as a political ambush, a calculated strike to bring down their leader. Others chose silence, weighing their loyalties and calculating survival in real time, unsure whether to rally behind the Prime Minister or quietly retreat. Across the aisle, the Conservatives moved with ruthless precision. They smelled blood. Calls for Starmer's immediate resignation echoed through the Commons. Demands for an emergency debate. Even a vote of no confidence surfaced within minutes. The Speaker struggled to impose order as the chamber descended into chaos. Voices raised, accusations flying, decorum slipping away. Beyond Westminster, the media machine roared into full gear. Networks dropped their scheduled programming. Rolling coverage began on every major broadcaster. Analysts, legal experts, and commentators were rushed into studios, offering snap judgments many before the facts had even settled. And the questions came thick and fast. Was this the end of Starmer's premiership? Could Labour survive the fallout? Would Britain face yet another general election? What would this mean for the markets, for the economy, for Britain standing abroad? Answers were scarce. Speculation was not outside the courthouse. The story took on a life of its own. Within an hour, hundreds gathered. Protesters and supporters colliding in a sea of anger and defiance. On one side, chants for Starmer's release. Banners reading, "Defend democracy and stop political persecution." They claimed the judiciary had been weaponized against an elected leader. Opposite them, a rival crowd waving placards that read, "No one above the law and justice at last." Cheers erupted. Every time footage of the arrest replayed on the giant screens nearby. For some, it was justice served. Proof that accountability still applied to power. For others, it was tyranny in plain sight. A democracy under siege. Police intervened quickly. Officers in riot gear formed barricades. As tempers flared, the air was charged volatile. One spark away from confrontation. And then the digital explosion. Social media became the second battleground. Within an hour, millions of posts flooded every major platform. Twitter logged over 5 million mentions of the arrest. Facebook's political groups buckled under the surge. TikTok and YouTube were consumed with live reactions, commentary, and misinformation, all blurring fact and fiction into a single frenzied narrative. Theories spread faster than journalists could verify them. Some claimed corruption at the highest level. Others pointed to classified material mishandled. Conspiracy upon conspiracy, each one feeding the next online. The nation's divisions deepened before our eyes. Internationally, the shock was immediate and profound. In Washington, the story led the evening bulletins across Europe. Programming was interrupted. Even in Asia, headlines carried the image of a British prime minister under arrest. The White House issued a measured statement, monitoring the situation closely. Brussels reaffirmed its faith in Britain's rule of law. Paris and Berlin voiced concern over the UK's political stability. Behind the scenes, diplomats were rattled. Allies questioned whether Britain's government could still be relied upon in a crisis. Within NATO, quiet but serious discussions began about the implications of a possible collapse at the heart of one of its key members. Britain's adversaries wasted no time. Russian state media reveled in the moment, branding it proof of Western hypocrisy. Chinese broadcasters echoed the message, calling it evidence of instability within democratic systems. The propaganda value was clear and heavily exploited. Political analysts across the world began issuing stark assessments. If Starmer could not remain in office, Britain faced a constitutional and political crisis of the first order. The Labour Party had no clear successor. Some predicted a government collapse within weeks. Others a snap election, plunging the nation into fresh uncertainty. Markets reacted with predictable anxiety. The pound dipped against the dollar as traders braced for further volatility. And as the country stood still stunned, divided and uncertain, one truth had already settled across the nation. This was no longer just a political scandal. It was a seismic rupture, a turning point in modern British history. And this is where the story takes a darker turn, because tonight we still don't have the full picture. As of this evening, the formal charges against the Prime Minister remain undisclosed, an extraordinary omission in a case of such national importance. Legal experts describe it as highly irregular for an arrest of this scale. In proceedings involving a sitting head of government, transparency is not optional, it's essential typically. Charges are made public immediately to preserve confidence and prevent speculation. The continued silence, they warn, suggests something far more complex is unfolding behind closed doors. Some legal analysts believe the investigation may relate to decisions taken during Starmer's time in office. Others point further back to his years as Director of Public Prosecutions, when his judgments shaped some of the country's most consequential legal cases. What we do know, confirmed by multiple sources close to the investigation, is this: sealed documents exist. Several court filings remain classified under judicial order. And in the 3 days leading up to the arrest, high-level meetings took place, unannounced and unacknowledged. Starmer's legal team, insiders say, worked around the clock, yet even his most trusted advisors were blindsided by the timing. They expected hearings, perhaps injunctions, not an arrest warrant and certainly not handcuffs. This was not a slow political erosion. It was a collapse sudden, decisive and total. A spark that became a firestorm in less than an hour. Across Britain, the reaction has been as divided as it is intense. For some, this is the rule of law at work. Proof that even the highest office in the land is not immune to accountability. For others, it feels like something more sinister. A calculated move to bring down an elected government. In pubs, offices, and homes across the country, the same questions echo. What happens next? Can a sitting prime minister govern from police custody? Will he step down? Or attempt to lead the nation while fighting criminal charges? So far, there are no clear answers. And that uncertainty, that absence of information is what makes this moment so dangerous. Because when facts are withheld, speculation rushes in, trust in institutions falters. The national discourse fractures. And the longer the silence continues, the deeper the cracks run through Britain's political foundations. This is no longer just a crisis for Keir Starmer, or even for the Labour Party. It is a reckoning for Britain itself. The arrest of a sitting prime minister is almost without precedent in modern British history, a moment so rare that it tests the resilience of democracy itself. Historians will study this episode for decades to come. It will shape careers, alter elections, and redefine how this nation understands power and accountability. For now, the world is watching cautiously and with disbelief. A country long regarded as a model of constitutional stability now faces questions about its very core. And as the hours pass and the investigation deepens, one fact remains indisputable: this story is far from over.